What's going on, you guys? So Terrence Crawford is looking noticeably bigger in preparation for Canelo Alvarez. Now, is this a bad look? The reason being is he putting on too much weight for Canelo. We recently seen Charlo come out and say that one of the biggest mistakes he made in preparation for Canelo was putting on too much weight. He just didn't have the speed that he had at 154. Now, I know Charlo's a different fighter than Terrence Crawford, right? I think one of the criticisms, if not the only criticism Charlo had, was just going in there to survive. He laid down pretty early in the fight, and most people are just expecting that he went in there for a check. Didn't really go in there to win the fight. Now, I don't think we would see that from Terrence Crawford, but is he putting on too much weight? We clearly see that his legs and his arms look noticeably bigger. And we've seen this just in press conferences, interviews, and there was a clip that recently came out of him kicking himself up onto his feet from the ground, and you can clearly see in that, one, he's got his athletic ability still, but two, his legs look big. So he's put on quite a bit of weight in this year-long layoff. Now, I think the layoff actually helped Terrence Crawford here, because he's walked around now for a little over a year with just more weight on him. He's more comfortable with that much weight on him. Who knows? Maybe he does walk around at this weight naturally. But my biggest concern is he going to go in there and not have the same hand speed and foot speed like he did at 154. But speaking of 154, we know that was his last fight, was at 154 against Madrimoff. But a lot of people either just forgot or they're just not mentioning it. He came into that fight at 100, just shy of 170 pounds, like 169.6 or something like that. And to me, he looked, just as fast and just as strong as he did at 147. In fact, I think he hurt Madrimoff a couple times. And Madrimoff, he clinched up, grabbed Crawford at those moments. And a lot of people may not have seen those moments where it appeared that Madrimoff was hurt. But a lot of people also are going to say that Madrimoff's performance wasn't his best. Yes, it wasn't the Terrence Crawford we're used to seeing where he's stopping everybody. But Madrimoff really didn't want to engage in any exchanges with Terrence Crawford. We saw him throw a lot of feints, threw some seldom right hands. He landed some shots on Crawford, but we didn't really see too much of the Madrimoff we usually see before he had fought Crawford, that just rush it in style, herky-jerky, just a tricky fighter. And I don't think a comparison between him and Canelo is the right comparison just because of the feet. Madrimoff has way more educated feet than a Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez is definitely flat-footed. He's definitely not as quick on his feet as Madrimoff. But I think another thing people are not giving Crawford credit for is he's just a naturally strong dude. This was a guy at 147 who was deadlifting 100 or 500 pounds. You don't really see that from guys that are weighing a $150 and less. So people are making a big deal of the size advantage of Canelo Alvarez. I don't necessarily think there's going to be too big of an advantage. Don't get me wrong, Canelo definitely is the bigger fighter just because he's been at the weight class longer. He's more comfortable there. But Terrence Crawford is the taller, longer fighter, and who knows? I kind of am suspecting, just based off these pictures, based off what I'm just saying about Crawford just being a naturally strong guy, I'm not going to be too surprised if they get into the ring and Crawford somehow is the stronger of the two. I'm not going to be surprised. I know that may shock a lot of people. It may shock a lot of Canelo Alvarez fans, but it's just what I'm expecting. I don't know what it is. I think it's all those things I had just mentioned, and just the size of Terrence Crawford that I'm seeing right now. And keep in mind, we're 2 months out from the fight. I dropped a YouTube short of Crawford at a photo shoot in his physique. He took his shirt off, and to me, he looked soft in that video. But that was some weeks ago when they were on their press conference tour. And, you know, he hasn't been in the gym. In this picture you see, he's clearly been in the gym. He's got a sweat going, and he just looks more muscled. I just think as time goes on, he's definitely going to trim up. We're not going to be seeing a soft Terrence Crawford. I think we're going to be seeing a more chiseled, bigger Terrence Crawford. When he fought Madrimoff, he looked pretty ripped in that fight, and he was at 170 pounds. And I don't expect Crawford to rehydrate too much higher, you know, than, you know, 175, if that. My thought, honestly, what I think would be best when I'm thinking about this whole situation is him not even trying to tip the scales at 168, you know, maybe come in at 164, 165, you know, not rehydrate that much. And I think the speed and the power is still going to be there for Crawford. I'm starting to think, though, that I'm getting the impression that he's going to come in at 168. He's going to come in a full-fledged super middleweight. And the only question I have, like I mentioned, is he still going to have the speed? I don't know. But let me know what you guys think. Is this a bad look for Crawford to be putting on this much weight? Or do you think everything's going to be fine? He's going to come in ready for Canelo Alvarez. Let me know what you think. Hate, like, comment, subscribe.